My fiancé and I moved in together shortly before we got engaged. Before we did, we discussed how we'd split the housework and bills. 50//50 down the middle with some wiggle room for when the other needs help. When we moved, it was into her parents' 2-story garage that they converted into basically an apartment. They offered a low rent, $700 total, and pitch in for the electric and internet so we could save money for our own place and wedding. My fiancé earns more than me and that's cool, I'm proud of her. Before we moved in together it always seemed like she was living paycheck to paycheck, and I chalked it up to the apartment she had prior having insane high rent. She stuck to the 50//50 arrangement at first concerning bills, but she missed often and I had to remind her about it. Post-engagement, she's back to living paycheck to paycheck, either missing or very late with her part of the rent monthly. The 2 utilities we pay, groceries, late with her car payment. Her parents have talked to me multiple times about rent and I've covered her missing portion to get us caught up. And then try talking to her. It always turns into her saying we should just move if her parents are going to hound us. I told her we're lucky it's her parents because anywhere else would have kicked our asses out. On top of that, I pay my own bills, do about 65% housework, arrange and pay for most of our dates and vacations. Gifts for her, pay most towards our pets. I've suggested a financial coach, but what kicks me is whenever we're around others. She boasts about being the breadwinner since she earns more. Goes on about the stresses of being the main source of income, all the hours she has to work to pay all our bills. I was letting it slide until few days ago we were at a get-together. She and her sister started up again about her being the breadwinner. Her sister said something to the effect of her ex-boyfriend had a hard time being with someone who earned more, and my fiancé went, "Good thing OP doesn't mind me bringing home the pay." I told her just because she earns more doesn't make her the breadwinner when she blows it all on herself and I'm paying most the bills. She's embarrassed now and keeps saying I made her look bad and got her in trouble with her parents, because they want to see what she spends her money on each month, but I don't think I did anything wrong. Last night I was ready to just postpone the engagement, as of this morning after a lot of talking and things coming to light. We are broken up. She insisted we could afford her purchases based off our total incomes. Her parents were under the impression she was also paying off my student loans, my car, my phone, and paying for our vacations. She didn't get evicted from her last apartment, but she was late with her rent often enough that they weren't going to renew her lease. So she didn't suggest us moving to a bigger apartment at her building. Biggest nope, I'm out. The monthly take-home amount she told me was what she earned before wage garnishment kicked in addition to mass debt. She's been doing some online stuff to make up for the money she loses due to that. I got the ring back. My newborn's pediatrician is always so crowded in terms of size of waiting room versus number of people waiting. It requires a certain amount of etiquette controlling your kid, because there are no toys, no play area, no real space for shenanigans. Enter lady with 4 kids, a newborn, 2 toddlers, and a kindergarten-aged kid, little girl in question here. She really should have brought an iPad or a second adult or something because her kids were literally running around the space, yelling and screeching. The mom was oblivious to all of her kids except the newborn, who was quietly breastfeeding while mom was glued to her phone screen. Accordingly, other people were put in the awkward position of having to discipline her kids. Several people had previously tried to put her kids back in line for whatever issue, harassing their kids, being loud, whatever. Her kindergarten-age daughter, who clearly had some kind of special needs, was absolutely enamored with my newborn and his stroller. She was asking me if she could push it around. No, she was getting super close to my newborn, stop, and was generally just being annoying. FFS at one point when I wasn't looking and was preoccupied with my own kid. She went digging in my diaper bag and throwing my stuff onto the chair and the floor. My newborn was really fussy because we were there for a sick visit and he wasn't feeling well. And I did not feel like entertaining some strange kid. I tried being polite about it. "Sweetie, where's your mommy?" Points to mom, ma'am. Points to kid. The lady would call her kid back, but the kid just kept coming back to me. Rinse and repeat. I told her she needed to stay with her mom. Little punk says I don't wanna and keeps trying to touch my son, my stroller, our stuff. Finally, I'm trying to fix a bottle of formula while holding a screaming baby and listening to this little girl like a broken record. Why is your baby crying? Why is your baby crying? Make him stop. I don't like that, and her annoying self knocks my bottle of formula off the table and into my stroller. So now I'm out formula, kid still screaming, and I have a huge mess that I don't have a great way to clean up. I'm at my wit's end. I raise my voice at this kid. Look what you did. I am not your babysitter. You are bothering me. Get out of my face. People looked at me like I was the biggest on earth. A lady speaking Spanish actually did call me a. The little girl starts crying. I'm not apologizing. The mom confronts me. I tell her she should have been watching her kid, and that's the hill I'm prepared to die on. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. My boyfriend Steve and I have been dating for over a year and a half. I met him in one of my upper-level classes 2 years ago. At the time he was finishing up his degree, before moving on and working on his master's. Since we started talking, seeing each other, and dating casually, I really loved our entire relationship. Steve and I had a lot of similar interests, which included traveling. We did a small trip to South America a couple months ago for a few weeks, Peru and Chile. We had an amazing time. It was once we got back from our trip that I saw our relationship in a whole different way. We traveled well together, and bonded in a new way. I knew I was in a great relationship. I thought we had a great relationship, until I got some news a few days ago. 3 days ago, I went over to drop a MacBook charger over at my best friend's house, Chenille. Chenille and I have been best friends since we were in high school from the age of 16 years old. I have always considered her to be my number one and closest person in my life. I have noticed that the past 6 months we haven't hung out in the same capacity that we usually have. Both of us have been busy with our lives, school, work, relationships, etc. But I kinda got the feeling after this past year of university around April that she was starting to move away. She had a bad with her ex that lasted under a year. He cheated on her with a coworker, and the rest is history. They broke officially around the end of January. As I went over to drop off her extra charger that she borrowed, I talked with her mom for a bit. Chenille ended up getting called in to pick up an extra serving shift at the restaurant she has worked at during her degree. Her mom wanted to talk to me about a few things. I was puzzled. Chenille's mom was always really outgoing and funny. We had known each other for over 8 years at least. But she wanted to have a serious talk. Chenille's mom, Karen, went on to tell me that she saw Steve and Chenille sneak around the back of the house about a month or so ago. Karen went on to explain that she noticed this happening 2 other times. At first, she thought we were all hanging out. But Karen told me that she got a weird gut feeling on this situation. She told me that I should talk to Steve and Chenille ASAP. Steve and I were supposed to go out for dinner last night. He picked me up, and off we went. I felt really bad and humiliated the entire time we were out. We ate dinner, had a couple drinks, but we didn't talk much. Steve kept asking me all night what was the matter. I told him nothing. Finally, when we got back to my place, we sat in my room and I asked him and told him what Chenille mom, Karen, is told me. He didn't answer. In fact, he went pale white. That gave me the answer I needed. I broke down and Steve tried to comfort me. I didn't want him touching me. I didn't even want to hear it. I told him to leave, but I basically had to force him to leave. I tried calling Chenille and texted her that I needed to talk to her. I got no response. Not one. Basically, 2 of the closest people I have had in my life betrayed me. This is so terrible and I feel so bad. I have like no one right now.